Hello and welcome back to Engineering Chaos, a podcast where my co-host and I talk about life as female engineers, give career advice to those coming up behind us, and talk about corporate America as it continues to screw us all. However, today, I'm all alone. There's no one here beside me. Excuse that poor rendition of Donkey from Shrek, but due to some scheduling conflicts, Ash and I were unable to get together for the next 2 weeks. So you get more of me by myself because life is life and sometimes shit happens and we couldn't quite get together. So she's probably going to be mad that I'm going to talk about the topic that I am today without her. But that doesn't mean we can't do an episode with her on this topic. However, it is a topic that has been in the back of my mind a lot recently. In past episodes, I have definitely talked about how unmasking and starting to live more true to myself, because if I fully unmasked, I would probably get fired. But starting to live a little bit more true to myself, fighting for accommodations, things like that. I have seen a lot of different stories when it comes to accommodations as of late. Things that come to mind is the TikToker that went viral for asking for time blindness accommodations. The TikToker I've seen recently that went viral for wearing quote unquote bondage and S&M material to work. There are so many different stories when it comes to neurodivergence in the workplace asking for accommodations that to some may seem completely unreasonable, to some may just be an excuse for being lazy, or to some may just be an excuse to not be normal. And I think this topic also has been on the back of my mind because after our episode on the should women wear makeup, is it considered a part of their corporate attire, for lack of a better way of putting it, episode, there was a lot of commentary when it comes to social standards, social structures. But what people don't realize, at least what I believe, and in my experience, what people on the neurotypical side of life don't realize, is that while we can do things to accommodate ourselves as neurodivergents, there are things in the workplace that are protected accommodations for those of us that are a little on the struggle bus when it comes to mental health, neurodivergence, and other things like that. What I wish more of the neurotypical workforce understood about those of us with a little bit of neurodivergence, and for me specifically, I'm talking specifically with my anxiety, my depression, my ADHD, and my potential being on the ASD spectrum. I have self-diagnosed as such, but I am in the process of getting fully diagnosed with that one, whereas the other ones I have been diagnosed in the past. What people don't understand about people like me is things like anxiety and depression are new to the ADA guidelines. They are new to the disability list. And while some people might disagree that everything in their mother is now on the disability list, I can understand as someone who deals with this day in and day out why those things are protected now in the corporate workforce. Because even getting the accommodations you need and self-identifying, because we will go into that as well in this episode, talking about if you identify your neurodivergence, how you are treated. Just the idea of asking for accommodations can be seen as an excuse. I'm going back to that TikToker, right? Anyone who was around TikTok at this point in time probably saw the TikToker that asked a job for accommodation for time blindness. Time blindness is not a direct symptom for accommodation when it comes to ADHD specifically. I believe that's what this TikToker was. I can't remember off the top of my head. However, time blindness is not something a corporate workplace, in my opinion, should have to accommodate for. However, the things that I saw in the comments with people going, Well, I bet that's just for being late. You never accidentally leave late. You actually do. At least in my case, right? I have been dealing, time blindness is one of my worst symptoms when it comes to my ADHD and my neurodivergence. And it's not just late. I had the fear of God put into me as a kid when it came to being late. So I am always 30 minutes early. And being more than 5 minutes out, right? If I arrive 5 minutes early, I'm late in my head. For instance, I just went to a Mother's Day brunch with my husband, and he left at exactly the time that it would take us to arrive. We were 0 minutes early, and we actually, in my opinion, we weren't really late, but it took us a long time to find parking, so technically we were late. Everybody was there before us. I can't deal with that. If I am in control of my own time, I will be 30 minutes early because I'm terrified of being late. I am the type of person that will end up in not time blindness, but paralysis. If I have an appointment at say 8 and I get up at 5:30, I'm not doing shit until I have to leave to that appointment because I'm so afraid of getting lost in time and being late. I have forgotten about appointments. But when it comes to the opposite end of the spectrum, you never stay late. I bet. I do. Now, I know this isn't true with all people because some people use their disabilities and their neurodivergence as an excuse not to do their job. And I recognize that is where we have gotten to with it when it comes to being a neurodivergent in the workplace and being on the disability list in the workplace. Everyone thinks it's just an excuse. When in reality, some of these things, they're on the disability list because they can be disabling to the everyday life and what is expected of you in a corporate structure. And I feel that. The company that I work for has gotten countless free hours out of me because I got lost in the time blindness hole and I ended up doing a 15-hour day. But I couldn't adjust my time later on in the week to make my time match out. So they just got free time out of me. And that sucks, in my opinion. That sucks to me that I had to give them free time because of the way the corporate structure works. I would give them a 15-hour day because I got lost in the time blindness, but I don't get any benefit out of it. So, yes, constantly making excuses that your disability or your neurodivergence is the reason you were late to things is unacceptable. You absolutely can find ways around it. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, getting yelled at for missing a meeting because I got lost in the void of doing my actual work has happened to me. Giving my company free hours because I ended up working for 15 hours because I needed to finish something, lost in the time blindness void, has happened to me. And I'm sure it's happened to other people as well. So constantly being, and I'm not saying that I can't accommodate myself for missing meetings because I do. I will sign into meetings 15 minutes early because I know that I need to go get on it or else I'll get lost in the task that I'm doing and forget to sign in. I will set up my day so that people can only have a small block of time to give me meetings so that I just run through my meetings and then I have the rest of the day to go work on things. Is that always respected, though? The accommodations I've put into place for me to be able to do my job the way they want me to is not always respected. A person with neurodivergence can do everything in their power to accommodate themselves without asking and identifying themselves, and the company and the workforce they work with could still completely ignore it. And at that point, I ask, whose fault is it? Is it the company's fault for not doing what they're supposed to and accommodating those people? Is it the workers' fault for not actively identifying that they need those accommodations? Or is it the rude ass coworkers' fault for ignoring the boundaries and structure the person who may be struggling put into place to help themselves. In my opinion, it's a little bit of everybody, right? Getting into the side of the mental health and the neurodivergent aspect, when you have to self-identify to get accommodations you need, that is a scary path to walk. I have worked for the same company for nearly 5 years now. There has only been one singular management team that I've had to self-identify with, because they would not allow me to utilize these self-accommodations that I had put in place in the years prior and continue to use now. The management team that I was working for was anti-accommodation for anybody. Even if you identified that you were a part of the disabled list, they made the accommodation process, the formal accommodation process, so impossible that getting your approvals, you were likely to get fired for supporting yourself before you got your approval. And that is a problem with corporate America and supporting those of us that are a little different. They say they want us all to go work and they want people who are on disability to get off of it, right? And I'm not saying everyone on disability can get off of it, but some, if corporate America was better, probably could. But the way the corporate structure is currently built is not welcoming. Similar to, I've talked in the past, how the fitness world is not welcoming to people who don't believe that simply existing as a obese human is not glorifying it. I reacted recently to this new fat men versus jacked men video that came out, and it made me embarrassed a little bit to be a part of the fitness space. The fact that when I am reaching out to people to guest on podcasts and things like that, I have to clarify that as a fitness coach, I am not for all the extremist things. I'm not going to support that and give that to your audience is insane to me. But it's happening. And it's the same thing on the corporate side of the fence when it comes to neurodivergence and accommodations and things like that. I saw a statistic recently that I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was 70% of diagnosed autistics that work currently in corporate America do not identify themselves as disabled or as diagnosed autistic. Why? Because of the stipulations and treatment that comes with it. In order to get accommodations, you have to identify yourself, but identifying yourself means people will treat you as less than, purely because you are asking for the things that you need to be able to do the job in the same way that everybody else does it. Something as simple as turning out the lights can help me. If I can get the lights over my desk taken out, it helps. Something as simple as these babies. And for those who are just listening, I'm pointing to my over-ear headphones. I wear them everywhere. I was afraid to wear over-ear headphones in the office, and honestly, I still am. So I wear AirPods when I'm walking around the office and over-ears when I'm sitting at my desk. Because without them, I do not focus at all in any way, shape, or form. And that is a me problem. That's not an everyone's problem. That is a me problem. However, I have taken what I know to be something that helps me with that, and my corporate job sometimes wants to take it away from me. I have had bosses that complain about my headphones. I have had bosses that when they put me in an office space with a door, complain that I leave my lights out and shut my door because I can't handle all of the noise around an open cube environment. So when I try to do things for myself that makes it so I don't put the burden on anyone else, they try to take them away from me. And that means I have to self-identify to get them back. How do you deal with that? Corporate America doesn't want to change, and some people don't believe it should. Some people just believe that this is the way it's always been and this is the way it's always going to be. We live in a societal structure that if you're different, you are going to stand out and you are going to be ridiculed for it. Some people believe that we should bring back bullying and shame. And while I do believe and have openly said this in the past that we have gone too far in one direction, the society is getting softer and we can't take jokes anymore. I also believe, as someone who deals with it, we need to be slightly more accommodating to the people that struggle with regular things that neurotypicals don't. I don't know how to make it fair, but I do know how to make it. We talk a lot about, sorry, I had wanted to reword this. We talk a lot about equality, but that's not what we should be talking about. We should be talking about equitability or being equitable with one another. Because the reality is, no one will ever truly be equal, because if everyone was equal, you wouldn't have a hierarchy. And the hierarchy in corporate America exists. Good, bad, or indifferent, it exists and it's never going away. You would have to completely dismantle how hiring structures work and how you're always going to have a boss. And that's unfortunate, unless you are the boss. But even then, your boss is your clientele. Someone's always going to tell you what to do. A parent, a boss, a teacher. And that's fine. I'm not saying we dismantle that. I'm saying make it better for the people that may do things a little bit differently. Because even as a student, I always did things differently. I hated homework because until I got into college, I didn't need to practice how to do things. I just knew how to do it after they taught it. We were telling stories this weekend about when I was younger. I was the kid that figured out a solution to things. I didn't want my mom to braid my hair anymore, so I cut it off at 4 years old. I've always been a little different, and I didn't realize how different until I got into the workforce. The workforce, my first couple years, and I've told bits and pieces of these stories on this podcast before, but the workforce literally destroyed me. And I would love to say college destroyed me, which college didn't help, but the workforce is what really did me in. I found out for the first time that I didn't fit any structure they wanted me to be in. I didn't know the difference really between casual and business casual. I really struggled with clothing for work, and I still do to this day even. I don't wear makeup as a female. I'm not the fancy go put in everybody, and I never will be. But I had this idealized look on corporate America that if I got to the big companies and I got to the normal corporate life, that suddenly my differences wouldn't matter anymore. But they did, and they do. Some of my neurodivergence, and I know people hate when people say this, but some of my neurospiciness is a superpower. My ability to hyperfocus when there's a deadline, I can make things appear out of thin air that we needed yesterday in 8 hours. That should have been done over the course of several months. I consider that a superpower in corporate world. But when there's no deadline and what you're trying to have me do is not interested to me, I genuinely do not want to do it and will avoid doing it as much as humanly possible. And thankfully, many of my managers have learned that about me. They will throw me at anything and keep me busy and just let me do what I do best and not try to make me do the things that I don't like to do. But some managers never learned that about me. They never cared to learn that about me. That when you let me just thrive where I want to thrive, you'll get everything and anything you need out of me. And that's why the Dragon Lady lore on this podcast has come to be, because she never cared. She never cared about any of us. Several of her team members including my co-host and a few of our friends, had neurodivergent or medical concerns that, typically speaking, with the addition of remote work and limited time in office and phone calls and working hours that weren't very traditional. There's all of us that worked underneath her had different accommodations that we gave ourselves in our previous environments. We never had to identify them as our accommodations, which was part of the reason I never realized I was accommodating myself until I started there. My journey since that has been interesting because I realized my neurodivergence is a little bit deeper than I thought it was. And a lot of people realize that once they become a part of corporate America, and it needs to stop. Don't support telling someone that they can be late all the time. But I also don't support telling someone that they need to give a 3-hour notice to the start of a work day for an emergency, purely because they missed a few meetings. I don't support when someone tells you, openly identifies themselves, because it is hard. Whether people want to admit it or not, corporate America is not accepting of neurodivergence. So when you openly admit for the first time that you are neurodivergent, and sometimes your anxiety, which may be something else, but for my purpose, I assumed it was my anxiety, could be so debilitating that you have panic attacks. When someone openly admits that to you and you choose to ignore it and continue to put them in situations that do take down their mental health, you're also taking down their physical health. Keeping employees both mentally happy and for they can go off and be physically happy if they want is an important part of retention of employees. When employees don't feel supported and don't feel like you actually genuinely want to hear what they have to say, they will leave. And that's why some teams, even at big companies that have all of these great, cool things available to their employees, some teams will never thrive because they created a bunch of old school managers, in my opinion, that have no concern, no happiness, even. They're all miserable bitches, in my opinion. Allowing people to express themselves in different ways, whether it be through clothing, whether it be through accommodations needed to be able to do the job, whether it be living a life different than what you expected, can create a lot of growth. You are never going to grow if you're constantly living in the same stuff. So that's where I struggle understanding why corporate America constantly wants a structure that doesn't allow for those that think differently, do differently, are just different to thrive and grow. And while this isn't every corporate structure, it has been my experience across several different companies. They want people to be in a box. They don't want to celebrate all of these different types of people like they claim they do. They want you to be, as I've said in the past, a corporate drone. But I do want to dive a little bit deeper into experiences that I've seen from people telling stories on things like TikTok and experiences that I've personally had when it comes to asking for accommodation. Because as someone, our anxiety rates are growing, our depression rates are growing, and while some of that might have to do with the fitness side of life, the physical health side of life, our nutrition in America is ass. And working someone for 13 hours a day with nothing but a vending machine available doesn't help. And in my experience, even when there is more than a vending machine available, those places like the cafeterias and things like that inside of big corporate facilities are only open very strict hours of the day. And if you happen to be stuck in meetings all of those hours of the day and you didn't bring anything with you, you're stuck on vending machine life. And that isn't sustainable. Plus, even if you did bring something with you, if you were stuck in meetings all day, you can't really whip out your meal prep and eat in the middle of a meeting. But that being said, let's talk to accommodations. Thankfully, I work for a place where my hours are pretty flexible. If I want to start at 5:30 and be done by 3:30, I can, for the most part. While I do have coworkers and events and things that will push my boundaries when it comes to times that I have set as these are my working hours, for the most part, I have been able to adjust and adapt to different times that work for me, especially if I need to get something done. No one really cares if I worked till 2 a.m. the night before and don't show back up till 10 a.m. the next day because of how late I was on the night before. However, I recognize that is a privilege. For a lot of corporate jobs, you don't have that flexibility. There is not any time flexibility for a lot of people, and most people struggle with that. While it is both, it can be a blessing, right? No one's going to contact you after a certain hour, in theory. I say in theory because realistically, people nowadays want you working 24/7. They want you available 24/7. And if you don't set those boundaries early and you let them get away with it, they're going to continue to do it the rest of your career. I made that mistake. I didn't set boundaries early on, and to some extent, I do pay for it now because now no one understands that, hey, when I block my calendar, that means I'm not available. Honestly, even if I did communicate that, though, I don't think people would care. That's just my line of work, though. However, going back to the you have no flexibility time one, if you happen to work for a company that, say, your hours are 9 to 5, this is a bad example because almost no job is like this nowadays, but if those are your hours, they shouldn't be contacting you anytime before 9 and anytime after 5. Does it happen? Absolutely. But your flexibility is limited at that point because you're stuck within those walls and confines the entire day. And not all neurodivergent people work with that schedule. Before I met my husband, I was a night owl. We talked a little bit about this in last week's episode. I function better from about 8 a.m. to about 1 a.m. Those are about the perfect kind of time for me where I still get my sleep, but I get to stay up a little later. I like the hours of the night where it's silent and my brain is quiet. It's the same thing when I am working my corporate job. I like either being on super early in the morning or being on super late at night because no one is IMing me. I'm not getting a storm of emails I don't care about. There's not as many distractions and it allows me to focus. That is an accommodation I gave myself. But if you don't have those flexible hours, you would have to go request an accommodation. And a lot of corporate places would say, these are our hours, we can't accommodate that. And either you have to live with it or you'll be fired. And that's the thing with accommodations. When you request them, it is truly a request. Your company, regardless of how simple it is to allow you to do it, because some accommodations people request, I will admit, are absolutely insane. No corporate company should be allowed to do it. But flexibility with time, I don't think is that absurd, truthfully speaking. If you were an early bird, you could start earlier and leave earlier. I don't think that's that big of a deal, personally speaking. However, some do view it as you are being different. What happens if someone asks why you're doing this? And that's part of the reason why a lot of us don't want to ask for accommodations, because it others us. When I asked for my full-time remote status, I recognized I was on a time clock. Because yes, they gave it to me out of fear that I would leave, and they needed my ability. They didn't do it out of concern for my mental health, even though I had expressed that the job had already caused me to have panic attacks on multiple occasions. They gave it to me because they needed me. But I knew that if I stepped out of line for what they expected, even though I had the accommodation that said I could do it, they would be looking for ways to fire me. If I chose to not come in person for an event, even though I technically didn't have to, they literally would have to pay me travel, which, spoiler alert, they never did. I knew that if I was available and I didn't go do it, fight my production over here, they would fire me or try to. That's how that team functioned. Not all teams are like that, but this is the problem with accommodations. My remote work was an accommodation for multiple things, some of which was my neurodivergence. But they basically said, you don't do what we want anyways. We're going to take it away from you and try to fire you. They couldn't legally say that, obviously. But they made it very well known. Anytime I would utilize my accommodation. For instance, if I were to show up to an event purely for my part and then leave, they threw a fit about it. But I was protected. My co-host, we were told that we would get ample of time to acquire formal accommodations in the case that our remote status was changed. She did not get that courtesy. I thankfully didn't trust them. When she attempted to request her accommodation, they made the process so impossibly long and so impossibly difficult that she made it all the way through a new hiring and moving process before it even moved, which, mind you, was months. Accommodations exist to legally protect companies, and I understand that, but they should be aiding the workers that actually need them. The reality is they're just there because they legally have to be. That doesn't mean you're getting them, no matter how simple and thick it is. So when I say corporate America is not welcoming to neurodivergence, this is the shit. Yes, people like the TikTokers do extreme fucking shit. I'm not gonna go ask my work to let me be late every day. That is an accommodation that I have to make prior to work. But if I know I work better during certain times, or that I need something like an alarm or headphones or simple things that just allow me to do my job better, I should be allowed to just do them. I shouldn't have to request some special paperwork that says I am okay to do this. And yes, people are judgmental motherfuckers. Why do we care so much about what other people are doing? Specifically at a corporate job, right? I care what the government's doing because it impacts me. At work, I don't give two shits what people are doing. It does not impact me unless you walk into our meeting not with your part of something, because that does frustrate me. I don't judge people for it. They probably have a reason. Whether it's a good one or not is not up to me. That is management's job to deal with. But I genuinely do not give two fucks if you're wandering around the office with headphones, or if you took your light out, or if you just never turn the lights on, or if you wear sunglasses all day because the lights give you a headache. I really don't give a shit. Do you look a little odd wearing sunglasses all over the place? Yeah, I've done it, and people stare at me. Do I care? No. Because it's better than getting a goddamn migraine. And that's what I don't get. Why do people care so much about what other people are doing? And it's the same, it goes back to the conversation about what people get in trouble for certain types of clothes. And the TikToker I mentioned earlier that got fired for wearing bondage material, for those listening, I air quoted, to work. It was a mask harness thing, and yes, I will give people some credit and say it does kind of look like it may belong in the bedroom. However, said person was fully covered outside of that, so why does it fucking matter? I know people are gonna come at me and be like, well, it's just because that's how society works. Why are we not training people to just mind their own fucking business? People would have much, in my opinion, I am not a medical professional of the mental health realm at all, but people, in my opinion, would have much better mental health if people just worried about their own damn selves. I don't give a shit if you need to work from 8 to 4, by all means, work from 8 to 4. Like, I don't give two shits. I really don't even care if you're available. Just respond, right? If I send you an email, respond at some point. Or if an IM, respond at some point. I don't care when you respond to me, usually, because if I'm asking you, I don't need it that time. Because if I'm asking you, I'm probably gonna find it myself by the time you answer me. Why do people give so much thought to what other people are doing? Why am I judged for wearing headphones around the office? Why does it matter if I go to lunch with my coworkers? Why does it matter if I work remote, if I get my job done? There is so much energy in corporate America being put into what other people are doing that if you took all of that energy and, I don't know, fucking put it into your relationship, maybe divorce rates wouldn't be so goddamn fucking high. I just don't get it. And as a member of the neurospices that does fear having a formal ASD diagnostic, and part of the reason I've procrastinated the shit out of it, we need to do better. And I know I've said this 500 times in my other episodes, but we really, corporate America, the generations coming up behind me, my generation, Ash's generation, hopefully we can get some of the Gen Xers on with us to. The boomers are on their way out. I really don't give a shit what they think. They think Trump is a fucking god. I don't know. Someone in our comments was like, you need to get out of the woke cult. And my immediate response to that was, I am not in anybody's cult. Trump's cult or the left's cult. It all is stupid. You all pay too much damn attention to what other people are doing. This could go political, but I'm trying to keep it at the corporate America. We talked about microaggressions and unconscious biases. Yes, those words have been weaponized to hell, apparently. Fuck if I know, they're just fucking words. It's like parents that freak out about their kids saying curse words. They're words! Mental health diagnostics are rising in almost every category. And some might say because we're a weaker society and they're over-diagnosing everything, which to some extent, maybe we shouldn't be putting 10-year-old boys that are just hyperactive because they're fucking 10-year-old boys and can't sit at a desk all day on Adderall. But some people do truly need it. However, if we want to get people off medications, let's look at the way we fucking do shit. We as adults shouldn't be sitting at a desk 8 hours to 10 hours a day. So why are we expecting our kids to do it? You want to talk about accommodations. Maybe that's an accommodation. Allow me to not be in meetings for 5 hours a day with no break. Would I get that accommodation? Absolutely fucking not. I like working remote. One of the reasons, because I have this thing under my desk called a walk pad. Do I have a walk pad available to me at work? Yes, but we are only allowed to book them for 30 minutes at a time. So if I have 5 hours of meetings, plus if I was on site, those meetings would be in physical conference rooms, which means I also can't be on the walk pad in my little meeting. When I work remote, I can do that. That is an accommodation I make for myself to be able to focus on work shit. So if we do these things as adults, why do we expect our kids not to be completely bored out of their mind staring at the wall all day. It doesn't make any sense to me. Taking away physical activity doesn't make any sense to me, especially from kids. The younger the kid is, the more energy they're gonna have. Medication's not the answer to that. And I'm not anti-meds, I'm just saying. If we really want to, one side is saying we're all soft and they're over-prescribing medications and things like that. Well, if you want to fix that problem, go look at what's causing it. And if you're not willing to change that, shut the fuck up. That's the reality. Is neurotypicals are making the decisions for all of us neurodivergents, but they don't fucking understand. And even if we are overdiagnosed to hell, which I really just think it's more we have better understanding of how to diagnose these things. For instance, how ADHD and autism is portrayed and displayed in women is completely different than how it's portrayed and displayed in men. And that was never studied. So now we are getting more and more women being diagnosed because they were missed as little girls. Because they were shoved aside and no one paid attention to them. Because we're different. If we want to change these things, which some people don't, and those people that don't want to change these things probably have never had to deal with it. And if they have had to deal with it and they don't want to change it, good for you. You had a good experience. But we're looking at things completely wrong. We want to put meds first and diagnostics first. Yes, a diagnostic can help, but a diagnostic could also hurt hell. Especially if you realize as an adult that there were signs your entire life and no one cared to figure that out. Hating on accommodations makes our situation worse as neurodivergents. People who are openly saying, "Oh, I bet it's not the other way around." Have you ever lived with this shit? Because I guarantee you it is the other way around. And it's a wild take to act like these real symptoms. Oh, yes, as I've recognized previously in this episode, people do take it to the extremes. Wild extremes. I'm not saying they don't. Because they do. And that's the stuff that gets popular, unfortunately. However, those of us in the middle that really just want a little bit of help to feel normal, to act like we actually belong and not having to mask 24/7, which, spoiler alert, destroys our mental health and potentially our physical health, depending on how bad we mask. Because me having 3 panic attacks in a year because I was masking so hard and because I just couldn't take it anymore, being around those people and being around that job was not good for me physically. I can give you that much. I have the data to prove that. Stress is one of the biggest issues when it comes to physical recovery and physical fitness. It can completely destroy your physical health, let alone your mental health. Stress impacts your sleep. Stress impacts your digestion sometimes. Stress impacts your muscle recovery if you work out. Your heart health, even if you're way over stress, your aging rates. You could be aging a lot quicker just because you're stressed. But you want to know what would help the stress of some people when it comes to work and corporate America? Being able to feel like a normal fucking human being because they get to be themselves and not get ridiculed and shamed. There's a lot of data in the fitness space that shaming people into working out doesn't work. Shaming people into being a corporate drone is not going to work. It's only going to drive them away, and it's only going to continue to fuck them up if they stay. Shaming doesn't work. I'm not saying coddle them into being mediocre, but shame doesn't work either. Allowing them to have at least the smallest resemblance of what is normal to them. Blocking out some of the extra stimuli. Again, I'm talking a lot from my own personal experience. Obviously, there's more accommodations for other disabilities and things like that. The ones I'm mentioning are just purely my own things. Remote work can be helpful for people with things like IBS. Remote work can be helpful for introverts and not even being on the disability list. There are ergonomic accommodations for people with back injuries that aren't technically considered disabilities. Things like that. There are so many accommodations that have nothing to do with neurodivergence, but I'm going out of my own experience here trying to get accommodations, accommodating myself as a neurodivergent because I have seen a lot of rhetoric online when it comes to just get used to it. It's the workforce. Well, you're slowly killing all of us when you say that. And that's an extreme take, but it's a realistic take. You as the individual who's fighting against us being able to get the accommodations we need are slowly killing each individual that needs an accommodation to be able to do their job. Oh, and you're likely, I don't know stats on this, but in my opinion, you were also raising the unemployment rates and forcing more people to be those government dependent idiots you like to claim they are. Corporate world is not a place for those with neurodivergence or those that need any form of accommodation. I've talked in the past how I don't think I've never seen, to be fair, I've never seen someone in a wheelchair on my facility at work. And I don't think they would do well at my facility. It is not well set up for people who might not need physical accommodations. I'm not entirely sure that for a long-term basis, right? Obviously people get injured, but in a long-term scenario, I don't know that someone would be able to make it where I work in a wheelchair. That's just my 2 cents. I know a lot of facilities are not great at being ADA compliant with that, but I don't have experience with that. That's just my 2 cents from the week and a half that I was on crutches. And that's not the same as living life like that. So I think if we want to continue to grow our workforces and create cool things, especially as engineers, but just in corporate America as a whole, we want to continue to grow people, grow our workforces, grow our businesses. We need to focus on the wellness of people, both physically and mentally, and accommodations is a piece of that. Yes, they will be othered, and if they're like me, that will make them feel uncomfortable because they've been forced to be a part of a box their entire life. They will be othered. However, people should just mind their own goddamn business. Truthfully, they don't, but they should. It will feel better to be othered and do the things that you need to be able to do than it will to fight your nature to be able to keep a job. I think the corporate workforce is a better place if we start to make these changes when it comes to not making everyone so uniform and allowing people to express themselves how they need to express themselves. Obviously, there's lines, and I don't have all the answers. There is obviously lines, especially if you're going to be a forward-facing entity and things like that. But for the most part, people should be allowed to express themselves in whatever way they need to, as long as they're doing the job. Is that the reality right now? No, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it ever could be. I'm saying it should be. Whether you agree with me or not on a lot of the takes that I have or my co-host has, until you've lived the experience of being a neurodivergent in the workplace, whose management actively takes away accommodations they had made for themselves so that they aren't a bother on anybody else or othering themselves, you really don't have a say in this. Until you are someone who needs some level of accommodation to be able to do your job like everybody else, in my opinion, you don't get to say how we do our jobs and how we get frustrated when people can't see that we need some of these basic accommodations to be able to survive and keep a job. You don't get to say that we don't belong in the workforce if we can't conform to your rules. If I can do the job, your rules don't matter. And I'm sorry, people can disagree with me all they want, but in my opinion, Rules on what time you work, what you wear to work, where you work are all dumb as fuck. It is people wanting to be nosy and be too involved in your life. I don't want the government involved in my life, and I don't want my coworkers involved in my life or my company. And if I need to wear fucking headphones to ignore all your stupid yapping at the water cooler, I need to wear headphones to ignore all of your stupid yapping. If I need to work remote because driving to any facility, job opportunities open for people with remote work because the closest big company to them could be 30 minutes away. But when you remote work, you no longer have to worry about that. Job opportunities for military spouses or construction spouses, as someone who is a construction spouse, open up with remote work because those who know, if you're moving all the time, it is hard to hold down a job because people will look at your work history and be like, what the fuck? Why? Again, people being too damn nosy. Why does it matter if I only stayed at a company for 6 months? That's none of your damn business. Company sucked. I had to move because of my spouse. Yes, there are reasons, but it shouldn't matter. And it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit. The reality. I can recognize my privilege in that I have a very stable, for the most part, company. There isn't much for me to complain about. However, the company says one thing, and sometimes the management teams say another. And that is a battle I fight with who I go to work for. However, that is my choice. I will take it upon myself to leave teams that I do not fit with as soon as possible. I have no problem with that. And that's why I've said in the past, loyalty doesn't pay anymore. I am not going to continue to destroy my mental health and my physical health for someone when there's no reason to be loyal anymore. It's not like we have pensions and bonuses that come with being places for a long time. Fuck. Even PTO raises, right? Some people give PTO as a reason for staying with a company, which if I had more PTO, I wouldn't complain about accommodations because I could just take a day when I needed it. But I don't have that. I don't have and unlimited PTO is a whole different scam because then it has to be approved, and 9 times out of 10, they're not going to approve you taking off every Monday because you just had a bad weekend. Or 1 week a month, which would be ideal for me. If I could get a week a month to just bang out shit, I'd be golden. And I wouldn't mind working my corporate job. But I don't get that. And a lot of people don't get that. And the benefits of staying with one particular company no longer exist either because you have to be with the company for 10 years before you even get the smallest little bump in my situation, right? Not every company's like this, but a lot of companies are. Before you even get the smallest little bump in how you gain your PTO. So why would we continue to work for companies that don't support our needs as neurodivergent people, disabled people, injured people, even? Because if you have a long-term or a short-term injury that puts you on short-term disability, it's a pain in the ass to do all of that kind of stuff, or even pain in the ass to get basic accommodations for the short term while you're on crutches or have a cast or whatever it is that you need to do, right? Being othered in any way, shape, or form in corporate America is not considered conducive. You are considered underperforming if you are othered, regardless of your capability to actually deliver on the technical package. It's all about your interpersonal skills, which if you don't want to go into management, why do your interpersonal skills fucking matter at all? Reality. Again, people being too damn nosy. I have no care in the world. Teams I've been on want to do outside of work events. And I will get judged for not attending those events. These are things that should not be a thing in corporate America. If performance reviews are truly based on performance, which we all know they're not, then our interpersonal skills and our accommodations to obtain our job or to do our job wouldn't matter. Being othered wouldn't matter. Powers that be, the higher up rankings of corporate world, matter more than the people actually delivering on everything. They think pizza parties and t-shirts that you likely had to pay for are the solution to all of your problems. When in reality, the solution is probably less time working, more PTO, which are kind of one and the same, but 4-day work weeks, better benefits. For one, definitely support the better benefits, because even with my insurance, it'll cost me $4,000 to get my diagnosis that I really don't want to get. I want it for closure, but I don't want to openly state that I have it. If I do, I fully believe I will. I have taken a few of the tests. Again, normal people don't do this stuff. Normal people don't sit at home and constantly wonder if their entire life has been a lie. But I don't want to allow my employer to know if I do formally get that diagnosis. However, if I did and I was still with Dragon Lady and I had, for instance, ended up on some sort of performance improvement, even though I openly stated, hey, I have issues, potentially try to understand me for 2 seconds, I wasn't using it as an excuse. I was just trying to be understood. I could have had a wrongful termination suit on my hands. Anywhoozle, that is all for this week. I kind of enjoy these solo episodes, I'm not gonna lie. I love having my co-host, but I like to be able to just talk and give my opinion on things, and the shorter episodes are nice for me when it comes to editing. I like to just talk about life, and I don't know. I like the solo episodes. So there might be, not right this moment, I got too much shit going on. But in the future, there might be a podcast just for me that I might get more guests on and things like that. That's probably going to be more related to the fitness side of the business with all the gaming and fitness stuff. But we are trying to grow our little Discord family. So speaking of the fitness side of the business, if you like this podcast and our content and you are a gamer, nerd, cosplayer, all of my favorite categories of people, and even some of Ash's favorite categories of people, we do have a community Discord for everybody called the Chaos Realm that we are trying to grow. That is linked in the show notes below, as well as on YouTube. It's linked in the description and possibly linked on the page. If it's not, I will make sure it gets there before this goes up. But we're trying to grow. So if you want to come hang out with us on the Discord, we absolutely can come hang out, and you will get some fitness help. If you want to go hang out in those channels, you'll get some engineering, some gaming, some streaming, some just nerdy shit. It's a whole little fun community that we're trying to grow. So if you enjoy that, please go click and join the Discord. But also, if you enjoy this content, go out and review us, please, on all of your podcast platforms. And go find us at Engineering Chaos Pod on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I forget where we're at this point because I've been guesting on other podcasts and I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about sometimes. And then, as always, if you need any help with your health and fitness, and I will be running lots of deals and community game nights and things like that, please go out and find me at It's Coach KC on just about all the short form platforms, and then It Coach KC on Twitch, where we will be doing a live reaction to Jubilee's Fat versus Fit. We've been doing reaction content on Twitch. We've been playing Crab Souls, which is a really fun little game for those who are gamers that might be listening. But yeah, that is it for this week. You will have just me again alone next week because of scheduling conflicts between me and Ash. Hopefully we'll be back to regularly the two of us, but we'll have a guest from the engineering student perspective coming on soon, and we might have another guest talking about a workplace situation. We're still in the works on that one, so hopefully we can get her on. We found her on TikTok, but it's still in the works, so I make no promises on that one. Hopefully we'll start having more guests and more just fun back and forth stuff. We're trying to change the format a little bit here and grow this little podcast. So, as always, goodbye, my lovely Chaos Gremlins.